first show of the Citizen Annan show. First of all, I'm going to say thank you all for liking my page and for sharing it. We've received some interesting comments, and I know we're going to have an exciting set of shows these coming few months. Today's show, I want us to reflect a little bit on Ghana since independence. You know, what's on our emblem, our beautiful emblem that is at Black Star Square? The theme is freedom and justice. I want us to dissect this theme and see what it really means and where we've come these decades since independence. My personal view is that we flogged freedom to death. Kwame Nkrumah on the podium on the night of independence said we are free at last. And the chants have been freedom, freedom. And through all the years of different regimes, we've all struggled to bring about freedom. Freedom seems to be the key theme. But my view is that perhaps we should talk first about justice. Can you have freedom without justice? Or should justice be the first thing we strive for? Let me take it a step further. I believe that justice is in serious short supply, indeed in our continent and in Ghana today. Why do I say that? Imagine that you are a school kid. Is it just that you have to walk miles to a school? And when you go to the school, as I've experienced many times in my village, that you will go there and even the teacher is not present. Children, school day consists of 50% of the day being spent outside playing. And if you're not careful, the other 50% is spent running errands for the teaching staff or maybe working on their farms. Is it just, for example, that when you're feeling unwell and you go to a health facility, be it a big tertiary health facility or even a small village clinic, that you go there with fear? The fear is often to do with, can I afford it? Even though we have in Ghana today the NHIS. And the fear of not being treated well. You see, quite often you'll go, and I've witnessed this many times, and I'm sure so have many of you. You've seen that you go there, the attitude of the staff is rather lackadaisical. I've seen a mother with a child who's got a fever. You know, the mother feels the child is dying. And the staff, the nurses, sometimes the doctors, will turn around and very indifferently say, oh, as for this, we've seen it so many times. Don't worry, a little bit like don't waste our time. And I've witnessed somebody who's worked in the system, children die, really as a result of negligence. Is it just, for example, that you worked hard, you tried to set up your family, your children, you bought a piece of land, and the day you bought the piece of land, you tried to go and register it, and you've been tossed up and down. You can't register it easily, clearly, and in fact, it appears that Even if you don't put a wall around the piece of land you bought, it's fair game for somebody else to come and take it. It's fair game for the family or the chiefs or the system that sold you the land to come and take it away. Is it just that when you have a casual car accident, the police come or people come, and the person who has no insurance is the one who is receiving most of the sympathy? And you, perhaps, you've done the right thing, you have an insurance, have been asked to go ahead and try and save and pay for the person who didn't have insurance. I could go on with many examples, but we'll talk about that later. I think the reason why I insist that justice is what we have to seek well before freedom is that our behavior and attitude suggests to me that as a people we've reached a point where we believe freedom is everything. That if you want to be free, then you are free to intrude and impose on others. But as a collective, as human beings, we exist, live, work, and survive together. We cannot have limitless freedoms that impinge on the freedoms of others. What I'm saying here is that many people seem to think that I'm driving, so I have a car, so I'm free, and indeed it's even optional if I stop at the junction or the red traffic lights. We've all experienced this. You see, very quickly, some things that maybe we could consider as a privilege, like if you take motorbikes or Okadas today. I remember when it started, Okadas would gingerly sidle up to the traffic lights, look left and right, even if it was red, and now zoom across. Today, they feel it's like a right. Their freedom has imposed a right that says that I don't have to stop. And even when they're in the wrong, they have the sense of freedom to argue, although they nearly lost their lives. So this question of freedom, I think, has many aspects. The aspect I often think about, and I'd like you to also reflect on, is that how far has it got us? We were fighting for freedom against the colonial oppressor, and we think we had achieved it on the 6th of March 1957. But in a true sense, some will argue that we replaced that foreign oppressor with our local version of the oppressed. Freedom implies that in the governance system, you may, as it were, do what you wish. But I'm arguing that to get a proper working state, a proper working system, you have to really focus on justice. Why? Because governance, in my humble view, is about justice. Governance is about delivering to the citizenry all the basic amenities, all the basic protections, all the basic safeties that is required. The opportunities that ordinary people, ordinary boys and girls, men and women, can gain from a governance system have to be anchored around a just system. Now, again, I'm sure many of you who have had brushes with the law, many of you who have had to go to court, at the end of the day, when you leave court, you don't necessarily feel that you've had any iota of justice. I remember in cases that I have been through myself, you would go to court, it would be adjourned, adjourned, adjourned. Then the next time you go, the docket would be missing. And then you semi-give up, and then one day you get a call from your lawyer saying that, oh, you know what? The case was adjudged against you. What? You ask yourself, how did that happen? Because in a system where we have a network of injustice, a network of power, power-based interconnections, it is clear to see that people who are in a position of responsibility and power can very easily manipulate the system in the favor of a few and make the system very unjust for the many. So what am I talking about? I think that we as a people should start by teaching our children, our grandchildren in some cases, and school children, the importance of justice. Perhaps we should eventually think about flipping our national emblem around. Instead of freedom and justice, perhaps we should call it justice and freedom. Because indeed, if we cannot get justice, freedom, in my view, is meaningless. Now, what are the pieces, bits and pieces of justice? How could we dissect justice in a way to make us use it on a daily basis and infuse it into the fabric of the society that we call Ghana, of this project that we call Ghana. Ghana is very young as a project, and Project Ghana has a long way to go. I would say the first aspect of this is to recognize that we do have class. We do have those who are privileged and those who are less privileged. And in fact, if you look at the build-up to our independence, when you had the UGCC, the men and women that supported UGCC and those who were the leaders of UGCC tended all to be from a certain socioeconomic group and tended to have certain inbuilt privileges that made them even think that they should be the automatic recipients of the freedom once the colonial masters left. But that's interesting because they hired a young man to be their secretary called Kwame Nkrumah, who, by all accounts, from what I know, came from humbler background. He was able to get into the minds of the ordinary people. get an understanding, become popular with the ordinary people. Something that I think the others of the so-called Big Six generally didn't. I have never seen footage, or I've never heard accounts from my parents, my uncles, of the other members being carried aloft by women, young men, and being held as a true representative of the ordinary person. So that's the first element of trying to understand justice. If we do not accept that Ghana is not a classless society, that Ghana has people who are more privileged, a small minority, who are more privileged than others, then we want to recognize the need to do all that is just to bring up the less fortunate than us. So that's the first element, the recognition that we have an uneven society. We have men, women, and systems in place that favor a small minority. The second aspect of justice, I think that should be underscored, is that we then need to ensure that all the systems that are put in place, from the political system to obviously the judiciary, that's an important element, but even the executive and how we dispense power and the resources of the state have to be underpinned by that important notion of equitable distribution. Are the systems that we are putting in place, or that we have in place, are the projects and programs that we have in place favoring the ordinary man, woman, and child? That's the question that we have to ask ourselves. My third point is one that suggests to me that some of the most unjust thinking and actions that are taken on tribal and ethnic basis. We all know what kind of language you hear commonly amongst us about different tribes. This tribe is like this tribe is like that, and very often it's derogatory. We don't seek justice for people outside our tribal milieu. I want us to take a careful look at that. When we are criticizing another tribe, is it just? Is it right? It's your freedom to criticize another ethnic group, but it is right. Or perhaps you can start to see that in Project Ghana, we are one, and that if we are seriously thinking about being one, we have to make sure that there's justice for every ethnic group and tribe. The next point, the fourth point, is that I feel that justice must be a fiber that runs through all political dispensations. All political parties must bring that to the fore of their political thinking, activities, and policies they bring. A lot of parties have been talking about freedom, freedom, freedom. There was a time when, the freedom of speech, for example, the freedom of the media, is all put ahead of any thinking about justice. Is the media just by some of the fake news that they bring out in protecting their interests and interests of the ruling parties and so on and so forth? So I want us to also bring that to bear. So you're watching Citizen Annan show. This is a show that tells us where we are, who we are, and where we're going. So please remember to continue sharing this and get us on the social media and Facebook. Now, as I was saying, we're coming to the fourth point, which, when we're dissecting the idea of justice, we need to look at party political systems. Do the parties that we are living and working with, the parties, the two main parties and even the minority parties, do they promote justice in their thinking, in their politics, and in what they promote? I think that that's very important, that any of you, before you vote for anybody, is to look at that issue of justice. What is it that a particular party is bringing to the notion of justice? Do they believe in fairness? Do they believe in equity? Do they believe that everybody, including the lowest and weakest and smallest person in society, deserve a chance? So let me just round up by telling you that I've looked at justice as something that must come before freedom. And the first aspect was, we looked at the fact that we have to recognize that Ghana is a stratified society, is a class society. There are those who have and those who don't. And that our governance system, number two, are not promoting justice. And number three, that our tribal and ethnic sentiments do not promote justice as well. And four, as we just mentioned, that our political system, the multi-party system that we have promoted, is lacking in many of the aspects that should be the foundation of what fairness is about and what justice is about. So let me end this very first show by saying, let's go out and promote justice over freedom. So our emblem says freedom and justice. Every time you see that, you drive past Black Star Square or you see the government logo, think about it the other way: justice and freedom. I hope you've enjoyed this show, and be there for the next one.